Are you tired of unpredictable stomach issues ruining your day? Maybe you've been told by your doctor you have IBS. You've been for some testing, everything seems okay, so you're just told you have IBS or Irritable Bowel Syndrome and you have to live with it. So in this video, we're going to dive into exactly what IBS is, how to diagnose it properly so you understand what the causes are and the triggers are for you, and then that way we can come up with effective treatment plans to help you eliminate IBS. And while there's diets out there like the low FODMAP diet can be a crucial part of the IBS treatment, they're not a long-term solution. Later in this video, I'll explain how you can download a free copy of the low FODMAP guide to help you get started with the treatment process. But for now, let's dive into exactly what IBS is. So IBS is just a collection of symptoms, irritable bowel syndrome. And as the name suggests, it can be symptoms like constipation, diarrhea, bloating, gas. And if you go to your doctor and usually they just run a few different tests, maybe blood test that comes back normal. Maybe if they do more advanced testing like endoscopy, colonoscopy, and these are looking at physical changes. They can diagnose things like Crohn's disease, celiac disease, gastric, GERD, so like H. pylori, things like that. But if they all come back clear, you're just given this label, irritable bowel syndrome. But these tests, they just look for physical abnormalities. They don't show you what's going on with the gut microbiome, whether you have enough stomach acid, whether you have food intolerances, and these can all be the common triggers for IBS. So there's three distinct subtypes, I should say. There's IBS-C, which is constipation, so that's where you're not having a daily bowel motion going every 2 or 3 days, or even more, or even less frequently. Or it's just daily bowel motions, but it's hard to go and it's small and pebbly. Then there's IBS-D, where you're going usually more than 3 times a day, urgent, and it's usually liquid or very loose stools. And there's what they call IBS-M, which is a mixed type. Sometimes you've got constipation, then it switches to diarrhea, and you just never know what's going on. As I mentioned, the most common symptoms of IBS is this irritated bowel. So it's pain, bloating, could be constipation or diarrhea. It also can affect absorption of nutrients. You might get blood tests back showing low iron, low B12, low zinc. And it may not be that lacking those in your diet, but you're just not absorbing them because of this irritated bowel. So it's important to get to the underlying cause rather than just taking vitamins and minerals that may not even be getting absorbed anyway. So that's why IBS can lead to chronic fatigue type of symptoms, brain fog, if you've got leaky gut as well, like toxins from the gut can be getting into the system and causing other symptoms. Typical things like brain fog, joint pain, skin issues, eczema, psoriasis, those types of things. They can all be led back to irritable bowel syndrome. So what causes IBS? What's the main trigger? And this is going to vary from person to person. If someone's been experiencing IBS their entire life, there's a good chance it comes back to a food trigger. So if you've never done an elimination diet, looking at things like gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, they're the best places to start. If you've never been tested for celiac disease, especially if you've had long-term symptoms, this would also be a good thing to do. Just keeping in mind the doctor's test for celiac disease is not always 100% accurate. They only measure a couple of markers for celiac disease, transglutaminase and gliadin IgA. If they come back positive, you definitely have celiac disease. But if they come back negative, it doesn't rule out celiac disease 100% or gluten sensitivity. You'd have to do a more advanced test like the Vibrant Wellness Wheat Zoomer to get those more detailed markers. They measure over 20 different markers for wheat sensitivity, celiac disease, and leaky gut. So if you've done an elimination diet and you haven't identified, it's one of these common food triggers, and especially if symptoms have developed later in life, then it may be another problem like bacterial imbalance. Have you had food poisoning that's triggered an imbalance in your gut bacteria? Have you had antibiotics? Have you been eating lots of processed foods? Have you been under a lot of stress? These are all things that can upset the gut microbiome. So doing an advanced stool test like the Vibrant Wellness Gut Zoomer or the GI map test from Diagnostic Solutions, they can help tell you, do you have pathogenic bacteria? Do you have not enough of the good bacteria? Do you have enough digestive enzymes? Is there inflammation markers? Is it possibly Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis that's occurring? So doing an advanced stool test can help to take out the guesswork. It's not the first thing I'd do. I'd start with the food eliminations. But once you've done that and you're like, I've still got all these symptoms, testing can save time and money in the long run. Other tests that could be done are things like tests for SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Trillions of bacteria in your large intestine, but very few in the small intestine. So if you get an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine, these bacteria, they feed off the foods you're eating, and that leads to gases and bloating and discomfort. And that can also lead to changes in bowel habits from diarrhea to constipation. So SIBO is one of the main causes of IBS. And SIBO is also caused by antibiotics, food poisoning, stress, all these same things that upset the microbiome. If I was going to do one test, I'd start with an advanced stool test. But doing a SIBO test with devices like the FODMAP can also be very valuable to understand the underlying cause. Another big cause of IBS is stress. So have you ever noticed that you've got a big event or you're very stressed out and you get like diarrhea or upset stomach? It can affect your digestive enzymes. Everything shuts down. When you're in that flight or fight state, like the opposite of rest and digest. So when you're stressed, your body can't digest properly, and that can lead to an upset stomach, especially if the microbiome is not in optimal health anyway. Other big triggers can be medications. Antibiotics are one of the biggest causes of IBS. Once you take an antibiotic, sometimes people actually feel better, but that disrupts the microbiome and can lead to low levels of the beneficial bacteria afterwards, and also create an environment for opportunistic bacteria to thrive. So it's common when people have antibiotics that their gut microbiome is not the same since. Other medications that can be triggers for IBS are proton pump inhibitors. These are normally given for things like reflux, nausea, and they lower the stomach acid, but that actually affects your ability to digest foods properly. Another medication that can lead to IBS is if you're taking non-steroidal anti-inflammatories long term. So if you've got like a chronic pain condition, you keep taking these anti-inflammatory drugs, that can lead to damage to the gut mucosa, creating inflammation, leaky gut, and a lot of these IBS symptoms. So how do we treat IBS? Well, the first step is doing some dietary changes to see if that makes a big difference. I recommend the low FODMAP diet to start with. That cuts out all of the fermentable carbohydrates that can trigger bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine and can lead to short-term symptom relief. And if that works, there's a good chance that you have SIBO. So the low FODMAP diet is not a long-term diet. It's just a short-term strategy to try and identify what's going on. And if you have SIBO, then we need to treat this bacterial overgrowth using things like herbs, special prebiotic fibers like sun fiber, certain probiotics, although you've got to be careful with probiotics because some probiotics can trigger SIBO. And I'll also do advanced stool testing. Once you get the stool test results, this also helps to identify what you need to be doing to treat SIBO. So there's no set protocol for SIBO. It kind of comes down to each individual person and their test results. But for some people, they just need to cut out gluten or identify that lactose is their main issue and they've just got to go dairy or gluten-free, or at least keep it to a very minimum. For other people, they notice that there's one category of FODMAPs that may be the trigger. That could be fructose or something like that. So in that case, if you're just reacting to one category of FODMAPs, you just might have to keep those to a minimum. For other people, it's stress. So things like lifestyle modifications, meditation, programs like the 𝗟𝗓𝗪 program. It's like gut-brain hypnosis program to help calm the nervous system. It works on the vagus nerve to help balance that out, and it can give great results to people with IBS if that's their main issue is stress. So if you've come back with your test results showing high levels of gut bacteria, I would work with a practitioner at Planet Naturopath. We use specific herbs, biofilm agents, prebiotics, probiotics to help treat the imbalance in your gut microbiome. And this treatment plan doesn't have to last long term. Depending on the results, if it's just treating overgrowth of bacteria, that might be 6 to 8 to 10 weeks long. Then it might be working on building up the beneficial bacteria, making your gut more resilient. If there's inflammation or leaky gut involved, I would always treat the bacterial infections or the trigger first. And then after that, we can focus on nutrients like glutamine, butyrate, bovine immunoglobulin, Saccharomyces boulardii to help heal the gut, improve the beneficial bacteria, and make your gut more resilient. The other good thing about testing is it can help to rule out other conditions. It may not be just IBS. You could have irritable bowel disease, which is like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. And these advanced stool tests, they measure things like the blood in the stool, calprotectin levels, and they're clues that someone could have IBD. It's also important to rule out, as I mentioned, celiac disease. That's a very serious condition, and not everybody has serious digestive symptoms when they have celiac disease. Symptoms can sometimes be very mild or even non-existent. Doing genetic testing can sometimes help to see if you're sensitive to gluten. There's certain genes that can make you more sensitive to gut issues in general. Like some people are more prone to IBS. They have a more sensitive digestive tract. For some people, only a small amount of bacterial overgrowth leads to this gut hypersensitivity and more pain and bloating than they would normally get. So in the description below, I'm going to include a guide to the low FODMAP diet. This is a free download, and that will help you understand the foods you should eat and shouldn't eat, With the low FODMAP diet, you don't have to be 100% perfect. Even if you follow this guide like 80 or 90%, you should see some symptom relief, if SIBO is the main issue for you. But if you're cutting out things like gluten or dairy, I recommend going 100% to really get a clear indication if these are your main triggers. So if you have any questions about this, leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this video if you want more content like this.